Welcome to a very special edition of Truckee Talks. In an instant, lives can change, and that was the lesson that Bob and Lee Woodruff learned in 2006 when Bob was injured by an IED explosion near a vehicle he was traveling in Iraq. Bob Woodruff is a well-known ABC News correspondent. He was traveling in Iraq covering the war when this explosion created severe injuries on his head, his face, his neck, and his shoulder. His cameraman, Doug Vogt, was also injured in the blast and has fully recovered. Mr. Woodruff has fully recovered, and he and his wife Lee talk about his rehabilitation and their journey together through his injuries and through his eventual return to news. In their book, In an Instant, Bob and Lee chronicle their time together working towards his recovery and talk about their lives as a family going through this experience. It was our very special pleasure to have Bob and Lee in the studio when they were visiting town in the middle of February of this year. We want to thank our volunteer crew that came out and helped us with this show, and we really want to thank Woody Woodruff. Most of you know him locally as Jimmy that owns Crux Events. We want to thank Woody for his help in getting his brother Bob and Bob's wife Lee into our studios. And of course, we want to thank the Woodruffs for spending some time with us. Follows is our interview with them. Stay tuned, and thanks for joining us. Well, Bob Woodruff, welcome to the show. It's really nice to have you here.
Yeah, I'm just lucky that you asked me.
It's true. Not too many people get on Truckee Talks.
Of all the places in the world, this is where I'd like to be, to tell you the truth.
I think you drew the short straw, but we'll just roll with it. You know, you've had really what I would consider an extraordinary journey from attorney to journalist, and that intrigued me in reading your story. You had a very successful career. By any measure, anybody would say, just keep going. It's a safe thing to continue as an attorney, but you got bit by a bug.
You know, I did. I got addicted to this journalism, which I discovered through some strange way, which is happening to go over to China, to Beijing, to go teach law to young Chinese students, and then Tiananmen Square blows up right in front of us. We witnessed a lot what occurred during this uprising. And then just came back and practiced law again, and I realized, you know what, this is what I really wanted to do. Even at age 30. At that age, you can discover what it is you really want to do. And I just took a huge pay cut. I was working for very little money, but every single day, way more happy than I ever was before. And I had a wife and a little, you know, my son was born like 2 months before we made that change. Our lives were better than they were before.
So there you were in San Francisco living the life. You had a newborn son. Your wife had a great career also. And you pack up and move to Reading.
Yeah, I went up to Reading, and I remember I had actually gone to Berkeley to start a graduate degree in journalism. I just bailed out of law and I was going to do that for 18 months to try to get into journalism. After the first day, I got an offer from this little station up in Reading, California, the NBC affiliate. And I said to Lee, well, you know, it's good news and bad news. The good news is, you know, I'm actually going to get out of this and go, you know, I got a job. And they said, well, it's about $12,000 a year. You know, it's relatively small with this one, you know,
that's
with
a full-time
young
job.
child. That's full-time, yeah. So $1,000 a month to go report on the things which I loved every day. It was something new to learn about.
But you knew from Tiananmen Square that you wanted to go someplace with this job. You wanted to do something international?
Yeah, you know, that's true. And as always, it's about the most interesting journalistic event that happened in I would say, probably a decade or two. And we just happened to be there, and that was the first experience that I had in journalism. So it took some time to get a story just as equal in terms of how interesting it was compared to that. But yeah, when I did that, I realized this is it. This is what I became addicted to and loved.
And eventually you found your way to ABC News, and you were slated to fill Peter Jennings' position as a co-anchor.
Yeah, we got that after, you know, Peter, unfortunately he died of cancer, as you know. And then after he died, they appointed me and Elizabeth Vargas to be the co-anchors of his program, which, you know, he was such a hero for so many of us for so many years, especially for those of us that were really thought that international reporting was very, very important. And there we were. We got first 27 days I was the co-anchor of World News Tonight until finally we had that, you know, horrific event that happened over there in Iraq.
So we'll get to those injuries. I'm wondering if you can explain or give us a snapshot of what it felt like the moment that you were told that you had that job with Elizabeth Vargas.
That moment, I think it's always a mixture of, happiness and also a little bit of nervousness, because that's a huge challenge. And it was also the way we were going to do that. We were going to, one thing that was important to me was to do a lot of my reporting on the road, not to be in the studio for all of every one of those days, because as the anchor of a program that's big, is you don't want to take the risk that there's a big story breaking out of DC or maybe somewhere else in the country, and suddenly you've committed yourself to be over in Iraq to report that week, or you've chosen even to do this one out in the middle of Texas, and suddenly you just have to rush back to New York to report out of this big story. So it's risky to leave, but if you got a co-anchor, then I could. So we can kind of split it up, the one to be committed to the studio and the other one to be on the road doing the kind of stories you really, really wanted to do.
And really what a journalist is after. I think that really speaks to your desire, not necessarily to be what folks might call the talking head in front of the camera, but really be the journalist going after the story.
Yeah, I never even thought about it. I didn't even watch much television news before I became into television journalism. That just happened to be the one that I got associated with journalism. But I never really thought about being an anchor. I really, honestly, I wanted to be out on the road. I wanted every day to be something new. It could be even once a week it'd be something new, but I always wanted to do something that was on the road with the people, to do the story in everything from incredibly wealthy areas to incredibly deep poverty places in the world, just to see the different kinds of things in life. And it's unlikely to have that kind of chance, and that's the one I always wanted to pursue.
It creates a very rich fabric for your life, but your children's lives as well, I would imagine.
That's true, and when I was in local news I did 3 towns in local news, Reading, and then out to Richmond, Virginia, and then out to Phoenix before I went into the network. And all those days during local news, I would go to work in the morning, and I'd come back and have dinner with my kids, or at least a late dinner with my kids each day. And then when I went to the network and doing a lot of more international reporting, I was sometimes gone for long periods of time. I remember covering various wars, everything from Kosovo, Yugoslavia, to Afghanistan and Iraq. Sometimes I would be gone for 3 weeks at a time, sometimes 17 weeks, sometimes 6 weeks. And those are the times where I'd rush back to see my kids and my wife and just give them an embrace.
Yeah.
I wish I was at home more than that.
It would make you more grateful for the life that you do have at home, to see some of the things that you've seen, I would think.
Yeah, that's all true.
So 27 days into what could have been the pinnacle of your career, and I'm quick to say it hasn't been. I think you've got a lot in front of you as well. 27 days in, you are in an armored vehicle or semi-armored vehicle, and you're in the lead.
That's right. There were close to a dozen vehicles, I think about 8. If I can remember the number. But we were in the front. This is with the U.S. military and the Iraq military, and they were trying to shift the power from the U.S. military to the Iraqis. And we wanted to see how it was doing. The State of the Union was going to be, President Bush was going to talk that weekend coming up, so Elizabeth Vargas was going to cover out of Washington, D.C. down to the Capitol. And I was going to be over there to see exactly what was happening in Iraq, what the kind of success and also the failure, the difficulty that's happening there. And so we went down to a place called Taji, which is about 20 miles outside of Baghdad. And we were going right down this road when suddenly this IED exploded. And that's, as you know, just like the book says, in an instant, everything changed.
I'm going to talk about that for a second here. You and your wife, Lee, and we'll have Lee on the show in a minute, co-authored a book about this experience, your injury, but then your road to recovery.
Yeah.
And boy, I've got lots of questions to ask Lee about her experience while you were in the hospital. But what's surprising to me about the contents of your journal is how much detail you've been able to recapture and remember through what for most people would be an ordeal that they would block from their memory. Was writing the book cathartic for you, and was it cathartic for your marriage as well?
Well, when we wrote this book, I had my inability to even remember the names of my own children when I woke up after this coma. So it took me a long period of time to even write the words and the sentences, but I could. My wife, on the other hand, she was doing this as therapy for her. She's been one ever since I met her that Lee would start writing whenever she had 5 minutes free, or she wanted to work through something emotional or intellectually, that she would start writing. That's what she is. I mean, she is a writer. So she began doing this even before she even knew I was going to wake up.
Right.
If I would ever be able to speak or think or talk again. So it took us many months before I had the ability to start writing again. And when I did that, yeah, I think it was very cathartic.
And your injuries were extreme. They could have killed you. You had injuries to your head, your neck, your face, and your back. Your shoulder.
When this explosion happened, it was about 20 feet away, and literally the rocks just pierced all the way through this side of my head. I had a helmet on and a body protection. Also Doug Vogt, my cameraman,
right.
who's also now living down in L.A. It's another long story, but he's finally come back from living overseas for all those years, and so both of us were hit, but this whole jaw was shattered. There's little pieces, they're about the size of a marble, rocks that pierced all the way through. One of them miraculously went all the way through all the trachea, esophagus, the veins, and stopped by the artery 1 millimeter away on the other side. I was shattered completely, my scapula on the back, which is this triangular bone on your back there. Other rocks went right to the side of my nose and didn't blind me on the left eye. And I don't really have many memories at all from that moment until I woke up.
And that was a long time later.
That was
5 weeks.
that was from January 29th, 2006 to March 5th, 2006. So entire February, which is that was when the Winter Olympics was. I missed all that.
Oh shoot!
So this year I finally got it back. Yeah.
I was going to say, and you're in here when you could be watching the Olympics now. I'm interested in your perception of the care that you received in the field, the care really that our military is receiving. You were triaged in the field. You were sent to a military hospital, if I have that correct.
Yep.
Initially.
When we were hit, they flew in the Army helicopters, pick us up, flew us out to Baghdad, gave us another helicopter, put it up. They didn't know. It didn't matter how we were then, whether we were reporters like we were, or the guys we were a soldier or we were a contractor. Didn't really know. And they got us into Balad, which is the main medical center for the military there, and they've done so many brain surgeries there, and absolutely, and even over there, they were just like basically intense with body protection on, doing this kind of surgery to remove this part of my skull off of here. That kind of ICU treatment for the military is about the best on the planet, because they are now living through this. They have doctors that have experienced all of this, and they knew more about it than anybody else. So if that was anybody else, I don't think that I would be able to speak right now. Who knows, maybe even to think very well.
That's interesting.
Because my brain was expanding. So they had that off, then had the ability of that brain to breathe. And so we went all the way back to Bethesda Naval in Washington, D.C. And they were absolutely remarkable.
And now when you look at our soldiers coming home, you must look at them a little bit differently than before your injury.
You mean in the sense of, do I know more about them and more sort of personal relationship?
Their
Absolutely.
experience in the
no,
field.
Absolutely true. I think every time a reporter spends time with whatever the group might be, but with the military as well, it's always better to spend time with the people you're writing stories about.
The
And
embedding.
that is absolutely true. Yeah, embedding is a good thing.
So eventually, your family started the Bob Woodruff Foundation. Can you tell me what the purpose of that foundation is?
Yeah, that's true. I've got 3 brothers. My mother never had any daughters, so it's all those guys. As you know, the one we always call Jimmy, my brother who lives here in Truckee, of course. I think some call him Woody, some
we
call him
Woody,
James.
right?
All of us were named Woody, actually. But we all put this together. My brother Dave, my brother Mike, brother Jimmy, and of course my wife and her sisters all put this together. Because what we wanted to do was to make sure that the military that come back, those soldiers that have served our country and have also been injured, they will be treated with as much attention and as much therapy than anybody else. Because they're going back to their hometowns, and we've got more survival in this war than we've ever had before. So people need help for long periods of time. And we'll do everything we can to do that. And the whole point of this is to try to get this kind of attention to their community when they go back. So we're supporting local charities that are doing this for them.
That's wonderful. And then you have the Remind initiative.
That's exactly the same thing.
Okay.
That's also, if you want to get online, go to remind.org. And that's the way you can get the information about what we're doing.
Okay.
And we have events, around the country here and there. We're going to have another of our big Stand Up for Heroes, which are our big fundraising event in New York in November of each year, where you can come out and see. I don't know. Springsteen has done it for the last 3 years.
I'm there.
Jon Stewart said he's going to do an MC it this year.
Oh, wonderful.
So
That's
we're
great.
trying to get people to. Yeah, you know what's really amazing is once people who don't even know any soldiers or Marines, they're serving in the war, as soon as they learn about one or get to know one personally, they want to do everything they can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had that experience flying on a commercial flight next to a soldier, and instantly I felt connected to what was going on, where it had been so abstract to me prior to that. So since your recovery, you've produced a number of shows, series, and specials on the environment. It's kind of a switching of gears from the international stories that you covered in the past, or maybe they were just where you happened to be at the time.
Well, I've done, in terms of international reporting, I did do, wars. I'm not allowed to, really. I can't get Lee to give me the permission.
No
cover
hall
wars.
pass
And
for
ABC's
wars.
not very comfortable with it either. But yeah, no, so I think one of the most important one for me is absolutely environmental reporting. I think we need to know about as much as we possibly can. And that's also my addiction for international reporting, because that is the most important international topic, I think, right now.
Earth 2010 was...
Yeah, that's kind of a scary one. That was 2 hours.
Yeah.
That's the worst case possibility.
But do you feel that people need to hear that?
I think so. I think people need to wake up. I mean, people need to know that things are changing. You get a huge growth in the number of the middle class in the world, which means that in terms of consumption,
Right.
is just far beyond we ever imagined. And consumption leads into energy use. So if the population continues the way it is, and not even just the population growth, but just the quality of life for huge numbers that were lived in poverty for so long, is that we need to figure out new ways to energize the world.
Well, if anybody hasn't seen Earth 2010, I encourage them to find it. I don't know if it's rolling around on YouTube.
2100, yeah, Earth 2100.
Earth
yeah.
2100,
Yeah,
excuse
yeah.
me. But I will say that halfway through I was a little frightened.
It's frightening, it is.
But you
Because
managed to end on a high note.
you can't really predict the future, exactly what's going to happen. I think this would be the worst case scenario in the sense that if we did nothing and it continued to go, that scientists believe is possible, but even they don't know if this is for sure or not, then we got to get ready for it.
Right.
And you'll see about this too. It's almost like never use the word cartoon, but you see in that story, that documentary, is that we're not using real people in the future. We're using like it looks like a cartoon. Because what would it be like? We can't even know for sure what it's going to look like, or no one can say yet.
Right.
So it's a way to show people this would it be like if the documentary.
Well, our scientists can't really agree on our past. It's difficult to get them to agree on what could be. But I really appreciated your take on that and your perception into the science and the data.